there wasn't a sense of security
Mhm.
emotionally in the relationship. So the other things like moving across the world or not having a stable job or, whatever, those felt extra scary because I didn't have the emotional stability and insecurity. And I don't even know if those are the right words. Um, but like those weren't as present in the relationship. And it could have been the emotional capacity at that time in my life that I thought, but it wasn't the emotional depth and capacity that I think I actually needed and desired and deserved in a relationship. Hey everybody, welcome back to Soul Snacks. Cami, how are you?
I'm great. I'm great.
Good.
How are you today?
I'm well. I'm
Good.
well. People, we are recording this during the frigid temperatures. So this is coming out the Wednesday before Valentine's Day. We're recording this a couple weeks in advance, and it is chilly outside today. So
Oh, yeah. I walked outside to go to the gym this morning and I took a deep breath and immediately started coughing because like feels
yeah,
like it's 20 below zero. Oh,
it
it's so
is.
cold.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah.
that kind of cold air, right? So,
Hmm.
but hopefully, what we're talking about today will maybe warm everybody up a little bit, or maybe not. We'll see. Maybe it'll create some fire deep down in our bellies. But we okay. So I said, this is coming out the uh, Wednesday before Valentine's Day, and Valentine's Day is often, we celebrate those people who we love in our life, and the people that mean something to us. And a lot of the reason that maybe we appreciate those important relationships in our, partners and in our loved ones and whatnot is because there's been people that have taught us about relationships in our past. And specifically, we're going to talk about our exes. So,
Oh boy.
yes, but not like, I mean, I guess we'll see where the conversation goes, but ideally talking about, the lessons that they've taught us and what they helped us learn about ourselves and, the good, like we're not going to like pull anybody through the ringer. I think also because there might be one of my exes that listens to our podcast. So
You
we'll
got to be
be
nice.
civil. But yeah, so we'll get into, the ways that they helped us shape who we are today. So Cammy, I'm gonna start with a question for you, okay?
All right. I'm ready.
So looking back, if you and I know that you and Bill have been married for, 22 years, but looking back to when you were dating around before that, is there a pattern that you can see now in the people that you dated prior? Um, that you think, that carried into like the pattern that now you recognize there and how it's maybe shaped the relationship that you're in now, or just at least, maybe not shaped it, but has helped you in the relationship you're in now?
Yeah. Yeah. So, boy, that's a really
Or even just your
that's
life in
that's a
general now.
yeah, that's a great question. Boy, it really makes me think back because I would say, I mean, I don't know how far back we're going today. I mean, we could go all the way back to high school.
So how
And
about
that
significant relationships? You know what I
okay,
mean?
okay. All right, but, some of my relationships in high school, I did find significant because I
Yeah,
learned so much, you know what I
that's
mean?
fair.
But
Yeah.
it was a time in my life when I was discovering and learning and
Hmm.
growing, and, so there's definitely, um, something about those relationships, even though I was never really, like, super tied down in high school. I did date a few people and learn some things. But,
Hmm.
yeah, certainly, since then, I was married previously, and then I had another relationship in between my first husband and my husband that I'm married to now that was pretty significant. We were together for a couple years. But what's really interesting is, in all honesty, all three of these people are completely different. Like night and day in so many different ways. So there really isn't any similarities. Um, I would say if there were any similarities, it would be things like, all of them enjoy are very active. All of them are, athletes or have enjoyed sports in some capacity,
Mhm.
or just like to go out and do things, stuff like that. But very, very different personalities.
Mhm.
My ex-husband was very gregarious and is very lively and the life of the party. And, you know, the person that I dated in between was more uh, he was more passionate and fun loving, but very possessive and very controlling. And then, I'm married to my husband now, who's I like to call him the voice of reason because he's very calm, cool, and collected, and he's more quiet and observant. So, um, I've had a mixed bag of relationships that have taught me all kinds of stuff,
But so
Uh,
okay, so I'm curious though because like what do you like they might be different on the surface, right? And stuff because even like what I'm hearing is kind of this thread of like, oh, fun, right? Like they all seem
mhm,
real because Bill, yeah, I mean he's fun, even if
mhm,
he is
yeah.
like quieter, the voice of reason or whatever in some situations. But so like what do you think it was about them that you were drawn to?
Um, I
Like
would
what
say
was that
all
pattern?
3 of them like more shared activities, things that
Mm,
we just enjoy doing together, going to
mhm,
football games, going to concerts, hanging out with friends, going hiking, going camping, all the things, all the outdoor things that I love to do, I
mhm,
did with those people. But what's interesting is just the personality types and the relationship dynamics of all of them were completely different. And
mhm,
which is weird because sometimes people will it's like they have the same patterns in relationships. They pick the same kind of people all the time. I
mhm,
That's not my experience. I have had very different loves in my life and have learned so many different things from all of them in
mhm.
different ways. And we can get into more of that as we get moving, but
As we go
what
down the rabbit holes.
as we go down, yeah, as we start getting down all these tangent rabbit holes. But I'm curious for you. I mean, when you look back at your life, like were yours similar or were they all different?
Um, okay. On the surface, I think they were all different, in a
Mhm.
number of ways. Like at the core, like they were all good. I mean, they were all great men, honestly.
Mhm.
Like I feel very fortunate to have really wonderful men who I was in relationships with.
Mhm.
Um, they had good families, they had good networks behind them, they had their values, they would show up for people, they wanted to like embrace life, and I feel very fortunate. And so I think while it still showed up, like of course people are going to be different, right? And I think that's okay because when, as we get into relationships, again, like we're different. So
Mhm. Yeah.
it makes sense that there'd be some things that would be different with each person, you'd hope. But I think surface level, there's there were a lot of differences. Um, there were a lot of similarities. But the I think if I were to actually think about the patterns of the people that I was with, it was I think most of it was more about how like how do I say this? Maybe it's just the lessons, honestly, because it's like
Mhm.
there's 2 significant relationships that I'm gonna think of as we talk through all this stuff, and both of
Mhm.
them were more non-traditional in their approach to life in a number of ways, and at
Mm.
the time, that was really uncomfortable for me in both of those relationships, and it was like, no, I want the traditional, I want the normal thing, I want the security and the safety of what normal is, right? Like, I don't want it to be too eccentric one way or the other. I don't want it I need this structure, the security, whatever it looks like, you know? I remember at one point, one ex was like, I just for me, like, speaking to me that, like, I want, the house and the white picket fence and the 2 kids and the dog and whatever, and at one point, that was very real. I think it was more so at the point when that's what everybody else in my network also wanted, you know what I mean? You're at that age where it's like, well, that's what people are doing. Fast forward, and most of those people I think have gotten divorced. But I think the lesson was those. the pattern that I see with them was that they were embracing a lifestyle that at that point scared me, and I think also was part of the conflict that showed up in the relationship, where now I'm like, "Hell yeah, bring it on." Like, that's actually the type of stuff that, like, I've been doing, it's just been on my own terms. Where before it felt like it had to be on their terms and, like, that they were pushing me into these situations where I wasn't ready to go yet. But now that it's on my terms, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, maybe they were just opening the doors into showing me what type of stuff is possible and creating examples of it and helping me feel like I can go actually do that stuff. It's just that now I got to do it on my own terms instead of it being on their terms."
Okay, so that's super interesting, but I wanna go back here. So can you
Yeah.
elaborate at all on when you
Yeah.
say non-traditional, like what types of things are you referring to?
I know that was kind of cryptic. Okay, so like for example, I had one ex who um like worked for himself in a number of different ways. It was, hey, I'm going to go do this for a little while, and then I've got this side hustle over here where like maybe there'll be some cash that comes in when I need it. There was nothing consistent in terms of financial, like any sort of financial security, aside from the fact that he had a very strong financial safety net because of his family. But it
Mm,
was like he could just go out and do all sorts of random stuff and create his own days and the finances always came in for him, but it was not this Monday through Friday structured job.
mm,
And for me, that felt very scary because that is not the world I grew up in, and not having
yeah.
some sort of expected, like, hey, I know how much is coming in and I know what I'm getting paid and that I have the security of a job and all sorts of stuff. Like, that was real hard for me to swallow. I remember at one point, he had said to me, and I think of this all the time. And mind you, like I still chat with him, like not often, but like often enough, like we're on, good terms. I feel like it's important. I think probably too, because feel fortunate in my relationships. Like I'm on good terms with my exes.
Yeah,
But so,
yeah.
anyways, so we were chatting. He had this approach that like every day should feel like a Saturday. And at the time, I was like, well, every day is not a Saturday. There are days where you have to show up and be responsible and get things done and da 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 da. And now I look at my schedule and I feel very fortunate for having my own schedule. Like I feel like every day could kind of be like a Saturday if I wanted to, right? And then maybe there's a Saturday that actually turns into a Tuesday because I'm doing a bunch of stuff on the weekend. But he had that mentality of stuff will get figured out, like it's fine. I'm not going to worry about it all. I'm just going to try the thing. It's going to come in, it's going to be inconsistent, but I get to be my own boss. I'm in control of my day. I get to choose how this is going to look. And now I'm like, oh, yeah, I
Now
get
you
it.
get
And
it.
and I
Yeah.
actually sent him a text within the last year where I was like, "Hey, I just want to let you know. I get the whole like every day should be a Saturday sort of thing because I can appreciate where that mentality has come from now years into being able to do my own thing and
Yeah.
um so that was one example. The other example was at the time of this other relationship, they were able to move abroad and to
Mm.
become an expat overseas. And in some different locations and was traveling a lot and all sorts of stuff. And the appeal of like traveling was there, but totally uprooting my life and like, I have a dog and like leaving the dog behind with somebody. All that stuff was just not in my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Traveling would be great. Living abroad away from my network and all my relationships and my community, that was not my thing. And it could be because some of the locations that he was going to like weren't top of my list either, but there was the security of that. And because at that time too, I had not flown overseas before and I was very afraid of flying and going, across the Pacific or over into, Eastern Europe. Like those were big travel,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
logistics and stuff. Um, and so I was like, that sounds cool, but also you're seeing all of this possibility and potential and whatnot, and you have the job to keep you consistent to go and do that thing. I don't.
Mm.
I won't have any coworkers over there. Yeah, we'd have each other, but I'd be leaving my dog, I'd be leaving all my friends and family, I'd be leaving my work. There was too much. And now, I mean, Mark and I talk all the time. We're like, when can we move abroad for a year? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, when can we go and try and, do something different? So I think those were the situations where it's like, gosh, both of my exes were huge advocates for me going out on my own and like starting my own business and doing and saw the value of my professional skills. And that at the time it was really, really scary. And at the same time, I feel like they were little cheerleaders for me to like eventually take that step?
Mhm.
So that was
Wow.
kind of long. But so those are a
No,
couple like less cryptic examples.
no, that's good. Yeah. No,
But
I was wondering about the whole non-traditional part of it. I think that's
yeah.
a big piece of it too, you know?
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Well, so what about you? I mean, if you think about patterns in that regard, right? Like the string maybe of the lesson when you think of where you're at now, is there something like that that rings true for yours?
um I think mine is more probably about just learning to be able to um how do I want to say this? Like let go of control a bit. It's
Mm,
taken me a long time to learn how to do that. You know, I still have my days. But I'm always been so very structured in how I am in relationships, right? And how I expect a relationship to be. And just like you, it's been drilled into my head, that uh you get married, you buy the house, you have the kids, you get the dog, you do all of that stuff. And so very, very traditional values. And that was kind of how I established and grew in my relationships. That's what I always wanted. Um, but I knew, I think I also had it's because my ideal my ideas are so strong. And like I'm so convinced, or I used to be very convinced that I had my way of doing things and my way was the only way. um, so like my first husband was we owned a business together, and that was really scary for me at the time
mm,
because he came out of the Marine Corps. I was expecting him to get a job. I had a full-time job, like, but then he kind of was like, "Hey, I want to start this business." And so there was a big investment involved in it, and it was just very, very scary at the time. And I remember there being a lot of discussions around that, and it was a lot of work, to do that. And then I move into, then that relationship kind of went sour after a while. Um, and then I move into my next relationship and same thing, like I have my ideals of how I want things to go. And that one was just an odd one.
mm,
It wasn't a relationship that I ever felt like was gonna really go anywhere. I think it was in all sense of the word pretty much a rebound relationship.
mm,
It was like I was trying to learn. I think I learned more about myself in that relationship and what I didn't want, and I almost had to go through it to learn those lessons before I was in a place where I could finally settle down and find my,
mm,
my life
mhm,
partner.
mhm,
So, I kinda took the, um, sense of, feeling like a failure from my first marriage that didn't that ended, and then I experimented, the second relationship, and then by the time I got to, the third, I felt like, "Okay, I'm in a much better headspace and a much better place to be able to just get into a relationship and bring my own things into the relationship, but also have respect for what my partner is bringing into the relationship and kind of letting things flow more naturally instead of trying to force everything. Does that make
mhm.
sense?
Yeah, no, totally. Well, and okay, so um I would suspect there's also something about the emotional depth that has come with your marriage, right? And even at
Mhm,
the beginning, just based
mhm,
on the type of person that Bill is, that's different than the first 2 relationships.
mhm.
I mean, is that fair to say?
Yeah, oh,
Would you say that?
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Mhm,
Because like, because I think about my marriage and Mark and how, and then the other 2 relationships, and this is in no way like a knock towards the other guys, but the emotional depth and communication was different out of the gate
mm,
with
mhm,
Mark.
Yeah.
And sometimes I wonder if there's like that string of control. I think when we control things, there is a sense of like, hey, if I can control it, then it's predictable, it's safe,
Mhm.
it feels
Secure.
secure, it's
Mhm.
stable, I know what to expect. Like it's
Yep.
a coping mechanism in a way, right? And so I wonder if the control was taking the place of the emotional security that the relationships weren't able to provide.
Yeah, possibly.
Well, I was going to say, and because I think of my own situation, like this isn't just
Mhm.
like on your relationship, because I think of my own too. Like it wasn't control, but there wasn't a sense of security
Mhm.
emotionally in the relationship. So the other things like moving across the world or not having a stable job or, whatever, those felt extra scary because I didn't have the emotional stability and secure and insecurity. And I don't even know if those are the right words. Um, but like those weren't as present in the relationship in what I realized now. You know what I mean? Like it could have been the emotional capacity at that time in my life that I thought, but it wasn't the emotional depth and capacity that I think I actually needed and desired and deserved in a relationship, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. Um, I would say with my first significant relationship, it was really I was so young. I was,
Mhm.
18 when I met him. I was at Michigan State and, he was over in the Gulf War and we became pen pals and that's how I met him.
Oh, that's
Um,
cute.
yeah. So I mean, we were writing for a while and then we finally met, right? And it was kind of like that initial like head over heels in love with this guy that's from,
Mhm.
Iowa
Mhm.
and it was just this all-encompassing like first love, right? That
Mhm.
I had never experienced before and everything was fast and passionate and fun and it was just this great thing,
Mhm.
but I didn't have the emotional capacity. I wasn't old enough to understand and I didn't have the life experience to be able to have the depth that you're talking about that maybe you have with
Mhm.
Mark or I have with Bill now, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's no knock on him. Like that's on me, right? I was young. I didn't know. There was so much that I didn't know
Yeah.
that I wanted that I didn't realize until later in life that I
Yeah.
wanted.
Yeah.
So there is something very valid there about what you said.
So, have you ever heard of the 3 loves theory?
Sort of. I've heard something about it. I don't remember if it's like the first love, the something love, and then the forever love or something like that.
Yeah,
What is
right.
it? Remind me what
Well,
it is.
I think it's interesting because we're both basically talking about like 3 different relationships, right? And so like
Mhm,
the 3 loves theory, essentially it's like the first there's 3 different types of love or 3 different like main types of love, right? So there's the first love, which is like, yeah, like we're learning the basics, the ideals, like the immediate, like the heartthrob, whatever that is, right? Then there's the second love that's a little bit more intense. That's where maybe like there's major heartbreak. There's like the deeper lessons that it's teaching us, like a little bit more of that, those like that really impactful kind of thing. And then there's a third love, which is like the effortless, like the
mhm,
unconditional, the long term, the more lasting kind of thing. Um,
mhm,
and so it's not necessarily like 3 relationships, but just 3 different types of love. You know what I mean? But I think
mhm.
it's interesting because I feel like it can kind of track with
100%. It does.
relationships, you know?
It does, yeah, it does for me for sure. I think in my second relationship, because I knew it wasn't ever gonna go anywhere, I think
Mhm,
there was a time in there where he wanted it to go a lot
mhm,
further, and I wasn't really interested in anything beyond, like, the rebound, just having fun kind of place in my
mhm,
life,
mhm.
especially having just come off of a divorce that was hard, it was brutal,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah,
Um, and so I was kind of like it I don't know, I learned probably the most about what I didn't want in that
yeah.
couple of years in a relationship that I was then able to realize in when I met my husband, like, these are the things that are non-negotiables for me,
Mhm,
and these are the things that I want in this relationship, and we had way deeper conversations, and there was so much more sensitivity and respect, like, going
mhm,
into it, and I think, like you said, the effortless the kind of relationship is what we have kind of built, and
Mhm.
it's just sustained over time, you know?
Mhm. But so okay, so I'm curious because why did that second relationship, well, you said it lasted for a couple years. Why did it last so long if you knew there wasn't really potential, if you knew it was kind of a rebound? If you also said like it taught you the most lessons, but like why do you think it lasted as long as it did?
Because it was so much more comfortable to be with someone than to be alone.
Mhm.
I didn't wanna be alone. I recognize that now, you know? It
Mhm.
was a lot more fun to have somebody to do stuff with, especially when
Yeah.
I was already sad and I was, like, still emotionally kind of a wreck from my first marriage, like, it was so much easier to be able to spend time with people, and it was kind of a distraction, you know, away from
Mhm.
what I was really feeling. I was able to kind of put a lot of that stuff aside because
Mhm.
I could just go have fun and go do these things that, like, distracted me from what I was really feeling,
Mhm.
you know? So, yeah,
Well, that's
but you don't
honest.
yeah, and you don't learn that. I mean, I learned that later, right? I
Yeah, yeah.
learned that I was avoiding because I mean, it was one of those
Hindsight, for sure.
relationships where I must have broken up with him, like, 7 times, and then we got back together, and then we and then I was never really satisfied, and then I would find reasons to break up, and then finally, there was an incident that happened that was the last straw, and I was like, "Okay, I'm done. I'm out. See ya. Peace out." And
Hmm.
for months, he would leave stuff, letters on my door or send me messages, and I just completely I shut it down. I was like, "Nope,
Mhm.
not going back." And then that was it. So last thing I did was I'm not going back again, you know? This is a
Yeah,
waste of time. It's a waste of everybody's time.
yeah. I'm it's interesting because, there's a relationship like that, um well, it's actually kind of funny. I feel like both of my relationships had similar tunes to them. One was
Really?
very much oh, yeah. One was like we, we're together and then we'd break up. And then we get back together and then we'd break up. And then we get back together and then we'd break up. And then back together and da da da, that sort of thing. Pretty much over the course of like the, 2-ish, 3 years maybe. And again, it was like
Mhm.
there were major flags for me. And not flags
Oh,
in a
yeah.
bad way, but
Yeah.
just like flags for me in terms of what I want or how, all the stuff. But to your point, it's like it was still somebody that was there, And I remember like it if to like there was at one point when we were actually broken up and Bauer and I were in a car accident and it was like the first person to call and to feel that somebody else was there to like help me,
Mhm.
and to like support me and hold me even and just like let me not have to be like the strong person in this really scary
Mhm.
situation that I can just kind of like crumble a little bit and that somebody else is like there to help me. And I think
Yeah.
I don't know if this is true, but I think you're a similar person where it's like that comfort and that support, right? And that like we don't
Yeah.
have to do it all on our own
Yeah.
is like huge. So I that's the one that I first thought of, but then I was like, well gosh, the other relationship too, like we were together for longer and then broke up and tried like but all stayed in contact the whole time. And it was always one of those things like, are we going to get back together? Should we get back together? I want to get back together, but you don't want to get back together. Now you want to get back together, but I don't want to get back together. But should we get back together? You know what I mean? Like we went through that dance longer than we were actually together. And this is no joke. I mean, I hate to even admit this, but I think it was maybe like 4 maybe like 4 or 5 years, maybe even 6 years, where like that back and forth of like, "Should we get together? But no, we shouldn't get together, but maybe we should get
Oh,
together." But
wow.
like like but we're still on good terms. Like we're still friends. We still
Yeah.
chat randomly. It's all good. But it was just this like I don't know. There was something that was obviously like neither one of us were there to commit, right? Like we knew that we're comfortable and that there's potential and that there could be some good things, but there's also something that just wasn't there. And that effortless
Mhm.
piece that just wasn't there. And then it was like, oh gosh, now I know what that effortless piece is and I can see why that was missing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I think
Yeah.
is yeah.
Well, and I especially think that after you've been through some of those experiences over time and you grow as an individual and you really start to understand like what's important to you,
Mhm.
and what you need in a relationship. When you do finally find it, it's just like, because when I first met my husband, like I honestly like we had two of our best friends try to fix us up, and I didn't have any interest. I'd just come off of a rebound that was a rebound from a marriage, and I was like, I'm
Mhm.
never getting married again. I'm not interested in dating anyone seriously. I thought he was too shy and too quiet, and I had all these excuses of reasons why I didn't want to go out with him. And then we ended up going out to like an outdoor concert one night, and I was like, "Oh, you know what? Actually, he's a pretty cool guy." And then we started hanging out, but it was kind of a slow, I mean, it's a slow process in the beginning.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
then it was like, it's just so easy. He's so easy to be with. Like he's just
Mhm.
such a good, like solid, good dude. Like
Mhm.
he treats me so well. He's very respectful. He's so like we have so much fun together. We have so many shared interests together. We're very different people. He's very calm. I'm
Mhm.
a spaz. We've talked about this before. Um, but if I wouldn't have had the other relationships prior to and kind of learned through those, I don't think I would have like recognized all of the things that he had that I wanted and needed, you know, in a
Mhm.
relationship.
Mhm.
So it's been like the evolution, the
Yeah.
dating evolution.
Well, and it's the evolution of yourself, because the time in between and to learn like who I actually am. So
Mhm.
there are lessons that there are things that these relationships were bringing up, right? And there were lessons that they were teaching me, but it was also not being in the relationships was learning like, oh, who am I actually? So that the next time I come to one, it's not only what have I learned about relationships, but what have I learned about myself and like what do I see for myself? When Mark and I started dating, I actually wasn't even interested in dating. I had hopped on the apps because we were going into lockdown and I'm like, well, if I'm going to be locked down living by myself, working from home, I might as well like chat with some people. And then it was
Yeah.
like 3 days later we had our first date and we talked for 5 hours and here we are married. You know what I mean? It was like not even an out I wasn't even thinking because I'll be honest, after some of those other relationships, I had also started to think about what would it be like if I never got married? What would it be
Mhm.
like if just if I wasn't in a relationship? Not because I didn't want it, but because I wanted to I think there was part of me that wanted to get comfortable with me, just me. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like with all of the pieces of who I was, with all of the beliefs and the dreams that I had, with being in my own space, like living alone, with being in my own thoughts and being in my emotions. And like, it's not that I like intentionally isolated myself, but I wanted to get to really know myself. And then once I started that, it's like, well, gosh, now I feel confident that if I ended up alone, not that I want to, but that I could handle it. Like I want the
Yeah.
companionship, but I'm okay. I can find community and find, you know, um, connection other ways too. And I think that also flipped a switch, right? Because then a relationship wasn't like, I need this thing. It was, hey, I'm comfortable with myself and I want this thing. I want to open up to this person
100%.
and I value what they're bringing to the relationship too, and that we're two people coming together instead of having some sort of, like need for it. You know what I mean?
I wish that more women would take time for themselves because I
Mhm,
have a handful of friends who have been through the same thing or that do the same things where they're just
mhm,
in one relationship after another and they never have time where they're just alone. They hate being
mhm,
alone. And while I can certainly appreciate that because I was in a relationship like that, and I know how hard it is sometimes to get completely out of a relationship
mhm.
like that, it almost becomes like an addiction, right? Like you
Yeah.
have to, like you get the rush of being with somebody and having them there to help you and to just to be there so that you're not by yourself. But there's something so valuable about standing on your own 2 feet and really learning
Mhm,
to love yourself as a person first before
mhm,
getting into a long-term relationship because you have so much more confidence in yourself and you have so much more um like an independence that it's unshakable. It's kind of like
mhm,
you become this person who can stand on your own 2 feet, but also, give to other people freely without
Mhm.
losing yourself in the process.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
and if that's one piece of advice that I could give to any women out there that are listening and that are doing these relationships where they're in and out of them, or maybe they're just serial dating, on the dating apps and things like that, and they're not giving themselves any time to just be and to learn
Mhm.
who they are as a person and to love themselves first,
Mhm.
I would say do that. Like, start there. Start with yourself first and then figure out,
Mhm.
what you really want before you start, getting into these quick relationships and then,
Mhm.
not knowing if it's something that you actually want
And
or
yeah, I
need.
mean, like it's understanding ourselves, right? Like, and understanding ourselves does give us confidence, and it does allow us to stand on our own 2 feet in ways, and it does allow us to enter into relationships based on like knowing what we want and what that looks
Mhm.
like and what our values are, and we can communicate that stuff. And so then I feel like that does end up, like, in some ways it helps, like, you don't have to go through as much of the relationship stuff if you know out of the gate, here's who I am and here's what I'm looking for and that sort of thing. And at the same time, a lot of when it comes to relationship, a lot of what we learn is through other people, right? So the relationships
Yeah.
are obviously still important. It's more of that like reflective time after, like the in between of not just like jumping back into things and staying in them constantly, so that you do also get time to like, figure out what you are on your own, I guess.
And process, right?
Yeah, totally.
It goes back to that whole soul contract conversation we had and
Mhm.
how we come here and we have these people who come in and out of our lives throughout the course of our lives, and they're all here to teach us something, or we're
Mhm.
we're there to teach them something. So I think the more time that you can spend in reflection, like, let's say you just get out of a relationship and you can reflect back and really like think about the things that were really great and the things that weren't really so great. I think it helps you grow as a person and really start to
Mhm.
understand not only patterns of things that maybe you did that weren't so great, but also understand, like, okay, here's what I really need. Here's what I'm really
Mhm.
looking for. And here are the things that I can't live without. I
Mhm.
just think it's such a better approach to do that, but it's not the easiest approach. It is the hardest thing for a lot of people, especially the fear of being alone is a real thing. It's really hard to do that.
Mhm.
It's really hard to just stand on your own 2 feet and
Mhm.
get to know yourself.
And I'll say this too, just like in the world that we live in, it's hard to like, I mean, even just from like a material side of things, right? To like afford to be on your own and
Oh
to
yeah.
afford to live in a spot by yourself and afford to do all these things, right? Like, not only
Oh
is there
yeah.
the interpersonal side of it, but there's also the very real tangible side of it. That is, hey, sometimes it's easier to like stay in relationships or be in relationships if I know that the bills are going to be split and that, everything is all of that is very real too. You know what I mean? And if
Oh
there's
yeah.
children, like there's so much nuance to it all, right?
Mhm.
But that the value that comes from the personal reflection and the ability, because we don't know what we're capable of if we aren't put in situations that also frighten us a little bit,
Yeah.
like that's
Test us. Test us.
yeah, yeah, and there's so many, like, and this is just, we're obviously talking about relationships, but it could go to in so many other directions too. Like, if we never take the time to see, like, oh gosh, can I stand on my own 2 feet? Like, can I do this? What does that look like? Then, you know, how do you learn? How do you know if you can or not? So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
yeah,
No, I
interesting.
agree. I remember after my divorce, I had an attorney that told me, because I was married for 9 years, and she said that she recommends anybody who goes through divorce take 1/2 of a year for every year that they were married and be on their
Mm.
own. And I
Oh,
remember at the time thinking, "Man, that's a long time." Like,
yeah.
I was looking at like 3 years I'd have to be on my own. I don't know if I wanna do that. And so what did I
Yeah.
do? I just jumped right into a rebound relationship, and that was a disaster. So I think there was something to that,
Mhm.
you know?
Mhm. Yeah. Okay, so I have a question. If you're if your exes were listening to the podcast right now, if they, let's say they were
Mhm.
both sitting next to each other and you could give them both like a message, what would you say?
Gosh. Oh, I think I would probably say, I have a great relationship with my ex-husband. He's a
Mhm,
wonderful man. Like, he's a
mhm,
great father, he's a good dude, he's got a huge heart. Like, he's a hard guy not to love, right? He's a great
mhm,
guy. I don't have any contact with my ex, after
mhm,
him.
mhm,
I would probably just say, you know, I'm appreciative for the time that I got to spend with both of them because I was able to learn so much about myself. I'm especially appreciative for my first husband because it resulted in my son, who is like the most
mhm,
important, person in my life, next to my husband. So, but I would just say that, yeah, even the bad times, like even the not so great times, were all for a reason, and I'm so grateful to both of them for giving me the opportunity to be in the relationship and to learn what I did.
mhm,
That's what I would say. What would you say,
mhm.
if you had them both sitting next to each other, listening?
I would say I'd probably say that they were right,
Oh,
but
okay.
they just weren't right back then.
Hmm.
Um, and of course, like the thanks and I learned all these things and whatever, but that like, and again, because I just think like if they were both sitting next to each other, because I feel like, yeah, they definitely met at some point.
Oh,
Because I think there was like some overlap in terms of like, oh, I'm with this person, but like we're all at this situation. That was kind of a thing. But um because again, like I go back to the pattern of like the biggest thing I take away from that is like, oh, the examples that they said of like what actually is possible and of stuff that I actually feel and that I've known deep down inside about myself, but that I wasn't ready
mhm,
to embrace then, but that I'm fully embracing now. So like they were
mm.
right about certain things then and helped kind of maybe open my eyes to like some of that, but it's right now that that stuff is right for me, not back then.
Back then, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. You
yeah.
had to get through that whole process, before you
Totally.
could get to where you are now. So
And I had to
it's
learn I
all,
had to know myself. I had to actually come to
yeah,
it on my own terms instead of somebody else telling me or suggesting it to me or whatnot. And I think that's I mean, as we do with most stuff, but like I had to come to it on my own.
yeah. And I
So,
think that's what life's all about
yeah,
is really you do have to learn, and you're not gonna learn as much until you experience it and you go through the emotions of all of it, right? And then that's
totally.
the stuff that really sticks. So,
Yeah. Okay. So here
I
this is what
love
I
it.
want to leave our listeners with. In the spirit of Valentine's Day and in the spirit of, collective coming together, all sorts of things. If you are on speaking terms or in connection with your ex, if it's a healthy dynamic, definitely not if it's anything toxic or tragic or anything like that. But like, you should reach out and just like let them know something that they taught you, you know? Like, just be like,
Yeah,
hey,
I love that.
good. I appreciate this or I appreciate that or whatever it was. Or don't if you don't want to, but I feel like that'd be fun. I'll
I
I'll
love
I'll
that.
commit
I
to
think
I'll
that's a great
commit to
idea.
doing it, okay? So, you won't be alone in
Do
doing it.
it.
I'll commit to doing that too.
I
Um,
love it.
all right. Well, on that note then,
I guess it's
if there's
time. I
anything
guess
else,
it's
it's
time
time.
we go,
Okay.
huh?
Like, it's time to go shovel
All
out my
right.
driveway in the negative 20 degrees.
Good
So
times.
as always, if you enjoyed the episode, like, share, subscribe, leave us a review, is really helpful. And we will catch you next time, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Bye, everyone.